please welcome to the stage Donita Brown.
When you look at my biography, it's much smaller than everyone else's, and I want you to know there's a reason for that. Teachers are living in fear for their jobs. And by doing what I'm doing, by fighting Common Core, I am walking a tightrope or a very thin line, okay? As we get to the question and answers, there may be some questions you ask me that because of the state law and statutes, I may have to defer that to someone else, but I'm going to do my best, okay? When Jenny was talking about FERPA, I want you to know this about her. When I first started with this group and I watched all of her videos, trying to make up my mind, did I want to be a part of this specific group? Because I spent the summer looking for a group, because I decided last spring I wasn't going to watch this destruction of our children. And what I'm going to show you in just a little bit is what I call cognitive abuse. It's happening to our children, 3rd grade and under. It's not going to get better unless we stop Common Core, okay? I'm not speaking on behalf of any school district or any teachers organization, but I want you to know it is not your school district that is at fault. They are as frightened about what's going to happen to them if they don't follow these state mandates, okay? The place you're going to have to go is that state capitol and get Oklahoma out of this. My feeling on that is, for years, educators at the local school district, we made our policies, picked our curriculum, and when parents were angry with us, we had to deal with you. We haven't decided any of this. We've had no say-so in it. And we are being told we either do it or else. I've refused for the last 3 years, even told some people who came into my classroom, wait a minute, you don't come in here and tell me how to teach. If I don't produce results, you fire me. But you don't send someone in here to tell me how to teach. This year, we're starting the evaluation process. If I don't do it the way they tell me to, I get marked down. And my school board's going to hire or not hire me based on those evaluations. So they have total control of us. So what I want to talk to you about is the cognitive abuse. This is just exactly what you can read in the handout. I'm going to try to give you a very short lesson in order to get to the part about why Common Core standards are not developmentally appropriate. Now, to really learn everything there is about cognitive development, you can get a master's degree in about 4 semesters of just cognitive development plus the rest of your early childhood education degree right out here at UCO. But it's a full 4 semesters, okay? This is going to be in like 3 minutes or maybe 5. This came directly out of the National Association of Educators of Young Children book. And it's just the first 3 parts of what is developmentally appropriate practice. And if you will look, it says that there are domains of children's development: physical, social, emotional, and cognitive, and that all of those are closely related. You as parents or grandparents already have an understanding of physical development, developmentally appropriate. You know that a baby sits, then pulls up, then walks, and then runs. And we don't ask a baby to run before it sits, right? Okay. With these Common Core standards, that's the kind of stuff we're asking our young children to do. Just like there is a sequence in that physical development that all of you know because you've raised children, there is a sequence, an orderly sequence of cognitive development. How we think, how the brain develops, and how we process information. There is a specific sequence of order for that. However, there's not a magic number. You don't go through these developmental stages at 2, you're going to be doing this specifically. There's a range. And since we're all unique in God's eyes, we go through these stages at varying times. So I am going to show you some ages along with terms, but remember, it can vary. So we have the sensory motor stage. Well, let me back up. The stages of cognitive development that I'm going to use tonight come from a man named Jean Piaget. He is now deceased. In the 1920s, he developed the 4 stages of cognitive development. He was criticized for using his own children to come up with these stages. So in the late 30s and early 1940s, he did clinical research and found basically the same thing. This has been around since that time. Many, many researchers, psychologists, educators have tried to disprove this theory. No one has been able to. They've added to, a gentleman named Vygotsky has elaborated more on these stages, but they have never been disproven. You can get on the internet and check all of this out. I have handouts with my references. Please check everything out that I'm telling you. Sensory motor stage is birth to 2 years old. You know what this is? It's how children discover their world. So I've written down through these 4 stages playing a game of Monopoly. If you set 0 to 2 years of age down at a game of Monopoly, how would they play that? They're going to pick up the game pieces and put them in their mouth. Okay? That's this stage of development. From 2 to 7 is the pre-operational stage. Please remember, these are now our 4, 5, and 6-year-olds that are in public school. That's kindergarten, 1st grade, pre-K if they're 4, and some 2nd graders are in pre-operational stage of development. These children think symbolically. They're just starting to put words and pictures together that have meaning to them to represent objects. They're very egocentric. Their point of view is all that matters. They're right, and they're doing a great job. Okay? You probably have seen this in your children and just not known what it was called. They think in very concrete terms. They have to see it, to understand it, or to know what it is. Yet, we're, with new Common Core, the math standards, expecting children in this age to understand that subtraction is the reverse of addition and explain how you got your answer. We're not to abstract thought yet. We're not even to concrete operational thought. Okay. Concrete operational is 7 to 11 years of age. Third graders aren't 11. Many of the things I've heard parents saying tonight has to do with the frustration of terms or things their children are being asked to think about or problems they're being asked to solve. They aren't ready cognitively. Okay. Formal operational stage is 11 years and up, where abstract thought emerges and the ability to think abstractly and reason about hypothetical problems comes into play. I want to back up on my Monopoly game, so this will make more sense to you since this is a 5-minute lesson. In pre-operational stage, the child sits down to play Monopoly. They don't understand the instructions. They might know they're playing a game, but what you'll see them do is they'll make up their own rules for the game and want you to play that way. Okay? We get to concrete operational for Monopoly. The child now understands the instructions and the rules of the game, but they don't understand the hypothetical transactions or strategies needed to win that game. They don't understand about mortgages or loans. Does that? Okay. And then when we get to formal, we're now able to understand the whole complex game of Monopoly. Does that? Okay, good. Here's the danger. Well, let me do this. This is again from our National Association of Educators of Young Children, and they have addressed Common Core specifically. And if you will look at the second bullet, standards should never be used to deny entry to kindergarten or retain a child in a grade. And that's what we're doing in this state. Jenny already discussed these people with you. And she explained, you're not going to get out of this. Not homeschooling, not private schooling. If you want your kids to go to college, because David Coleman is doing it all. One thing she didn't tell you, because this is so incestuous, he had a company, I want to say with Jason Zimba, but don't hold me to that. But David Coleman had it, and it was called Grow Network. And it was an assessment company. It was on Wall Street. He sold that to McGraw-Hill. The assessments, if your students are taking a acuity test, that came from David Coleman's original company of Grow Network. He worked for 2 years for McGraw-Hill before he went to the college board. This man is making millions and millions of dollars off our children and has no education background. Now, what the state legislators and Mary Fallon and Janet Barisi are going to tell you, and the National Common Core Standards website are going to tell you, and some of your administrators and teachers, because it's what they've been told and they're not questioning it, is that, yeah, there were teachers involved in this process. There were educators. I want you to know the truth. Dave, those 5 people needed a review panel after they wrote these standards. So they picked 135 people from across the United States. None of them were early childhood professionals of any type. not child psychologists, developmental psychologists, university professors, classroom teachers. None. The 5 teachers that, I believe there were 5, they were all secondary. When these 135 people, excuse me, walked in, they had to sign a confidentiality agreement promising they would never discuss what happened in that meeting. Is that right, Jenny? Is that what you found? Okay. Now I'm going to show you what happens. I think I've tried to give you a mini education on why these standards aren't developmentally appropriate. This is what I call cognitive abuse. This is the actual Common Core standards and the way they are written. So this goes from kindergarten through 5th grade. Now, anybody who's been a parent knows your kindergartner is not on the same cognitive developmental level as your 5th grader. We all know that, but this is written for all of them. This is what it looks like when it gets to me in my school district and most of the other school districts. This is for kindergarten. I picked this one because I felt it was the most absurd and one that most parents would go, that's laughable, even if you don't understand the stages of cognitive development. A kindergartner has to compose an opinion piece, an informational text, and a narrative before they can get out of kindergarten. To do these things, you would have to be at the end of concrete operational, the very end of that, and some parts of your development would need to be in formal operational to do this. So it's obvious to me no educator had any part in writing these Common Core standards because they're absurd. So now I'm going to tell you that developmentally inappropriate curriculum causes stress in our children. These are the different things that can cause stress in a child, or us for that matter. The first 3, I can't do anything about as a classroom teacher. Before Common Core, I could do something about the 4th one because I could be the professional teacher and the decision maker in my classroom. When we ask children to perform and behave beyond their developmental ability, it causes stress. Now, I'm going to go to chronic stress. No, I'm not. It seems I am going to stick with chronic stress. I will get to that. If a child goes to school who's 5, 175 days a year, 6.5 to 7 hours a day, and they are constantly time on task, being asked to perform tasks that they are not developmentally ready for, I would call that causing chronic stress. The other thing we know from research is the brain doesn't just develop in the womb. That continues rapidly the first 8 or 9 years of life. And depending on that child's experience, the synapses and the dendrites, which are the pathways that connect information, are developed, okay? When children are under chronic stress, there's damage to those dendrites in the brain. So research has shown that when you're under chronic stress, this hormone called cortisol is released. This happens to us as adults also. And that cortisol can cause brain cells to die, which can cause memory problems, learning impairment, cognitive impairment. Now, all of my quotes up here come from somebody else other than me. Look them up. They're in my references. This lady is a child psychologist, and I won't read this because we're going to try to hurry, but her video is on the internet, and you can watch her tell you herself how developmentally inappropriate and harmful these Common Core standards are to young children. This quote comes from the Yale Child Study Center, long been recognized as a leader in early childhood development. Common Core standards will cause suffering, not learning, for many, many young children. This Perdido Street blog is a blog by an anonymous teacher who's afraid of losing their job in New York City. But I liked it. Our first task as a society is to protect our children. These standards endanger them. Stress in Young Children article. The research indicates that the negative impact of stress is more profound on children who are younger than age 10. Chronic stress overloads the brain with powerful hormones that damages and kills brain cells. This comes from the Franklin Institute. Stress in children has its greatest effect on the brain. Research has shown that children who have experienced extended periods of extreme stress have impaired brain circuit formation. This comes from the Centers for Disease Control, the federal government. They're speaking out of both sides of their mouth. This also comes from the CDC. Children, and this is research-based, that have been under chronic stress have smaller brains, and their cognitive function is greatly impaired. This scares me for our babies. Of all the groups in the United States that yell and scream, they have no rights, there is only one group that truly has no rights, and that's our children. They're the only group that don't get to vote. They have no representation unless we, as citizens and parents and teachers, stand up and protect them. So I'm going to end with this. Would the FDA approve a drug with no trials and no concern for possible harm or unintended consequences? Because the Common Core standards are not research-based. There hasn't been a pilot of them. They haven't been tried or proven anywhere. That's why they attached a liability waiver. They don't know what's going to happen with this. But I can tell you what's going to happen with third grade and younger because of these research studies. So I really hope you take a stand and call those senators. They're the ones, Mary Fallin, Todd Lamb, and Janet Barisi, are being resistant. And they're selling our children for political gain and financial gain.